Are you interested in going to grad school to study STEM? The NSF GRFP just might be your golden ticket to grad school. All right, hi guys, my name is Alexis and I'm a fourth-year PhD candidate and current NSF GRFP fellow studying Biological Oceanography at the University of Hawai'i at Mānoa. I applied to the NSF GRFP fellowship in my second year of graduate school, and actually while I was on a 5-week research cruise out at sea. So I thought I'd just give you guys some pointers and a guide as to how to apply to this really prestigious fellowship. Okay, so very quickly, I wanted to go over what exactly is the NSF GRFP, what does it stand for? So it is the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship Program. And it is one of the most prestigious fellowships that you can apply for graduate study that leads to a research-based master's or doctoral degree in a STEM field. So it provides students or fellows with financial support for up to 3 years, and it is a 5-year fellowship. So this means that for 3 years that you're on tenure, you'll be getting a stipend of $37,000 and $16,000 will be going to your university to cover your tuition and student fees and everything like that. So this fellowship is really unique in that it is both flexible and portable. So by flexible, I mean you're not tied to the research that you propose in this fellowship application. You're not tied to that program, research advisor, university. If you get the NSF GRFP, you're allowed to go study at any university with any research advisor as long as it is in the US. So this is very flexible and portable, but the big point here is that NSF is not funding the research, they're funding you as the individual. So if you get it, you can take it to wherever you would like, do research on whatever you would like. They're investing in you. So you can think of it as a $159K investment in you and your potential for grand achievements as a scholar, as well as a leader who's going to be benefiting society. Okay, so next I wanted to go over who is eligible to apply to the NSF GRFP program. Unfortunately, this fellowship is only available to US citizens, permanent residents, or nationals. If you are a foreign or international student on a student visa studying here in the US, you're not eligible to apply, unfortunately. This fellowship is meant for early career scientists, so you can apply as an undergrad once you have your bachelor's degree, and also as a graduate student. And you are not eligible if you already have a master's or PhD in any field. As an undergraduate senior and someone that has a bachelor's degree, you can apply multiple times, as much as you'd like, before you get accepted into a graduate school program. As soon as you're accepted into a graduate program as a first or second year grad student, then you only have one chance to apply. So yes, keep that in mind. I believe that you can apply to this as a first year grad student or as a second year grad student, but second year of grad school is your last chance to apply. After that, you won't be able to. Okay, so before getting into the different application components, I wanted to give you a sense of what the reviewers are looking for in these applications. And specifically, all GRFP applicants are going to be evaluated using 2 overarching merit review criteria. And these 2 are intellectual merit and broader impacts. So these 2 things are very, very important for NSF, and when they're evaluating all sorts of fellowships and grants, you're gonna see this over and over again. So intellectual merit is referring to the potential to advance knowledge in a field, and broader impacts is a little bit different and is looking at the potential to benefit society and to contribute to the achievement of specific desired outcomes. And this is very broad when they say desired societal outcomes, but this basically can look like increasing diversity in STEM, increasing participation of underrepresented groups in STEM, improving science education, doing outreach, or bridging the gap between scientists and the public. So it can look like many things. It really just needs to be something that is overall benefiting society. And going along with those two overarching criteria, there's 5 additional merit review criteria elements that the reviewers are going to be looking for. And these I'll just list here for you on the screen so you can read over them. But basically, the first is again looking at the potential to advance knowledge, benefit society. The second is looking at how original, creative, or potentially transformative are the concepts that you're proposing. Is your plan well-reasoned, well-organized, and based on sound rationale? And is there a mechanism to assess success? So you want to make sure that all of your statements are speaking to that. How well qualified are you, the individual, the team, the university, and do you have adequate resources in order to pull all of this off, all of the stuff that you're proposing? So you really want to keep these 5 elements in mind as you're working on your application. But now I'll get into more specifics about the different application components and what that looks like. Okay, so I wanted to very quickly mention that for this application, you're not going to be submitting a CV anywhere. You won't be uploading it or turning it in anywhere, which is a little bit unfortunate because there is an online application that you need to fill out that's going to ask for your previous education, research, jobs, publications, presentations, honors, and awards. All of that good stuff that is in your CV needs to basically be typed out line by line into their online portal system. So no worries, you're not submitting a CV, but they are still asking for many of the things that are in your CV. It just takes a little time to input it all into their online portal thing. Aspects of your CV should also be covered in your 2 statements that you're going to be submitting, as well as your letters of recommendation. So there is the online application portion that is just a lot of the basics about you. You also need to submit academic transcripts. There is no minimum GPA requirement to apply, which is good. But I think in order to be a competitive applicant, you want to have about a 3.3 as an undergrad and a 3.5 if you're a graduate student. You also need to submit 2 statements. So these 2 statements are really going to be the heart of your application. If you're going to spend the most time on anything, make sure it's these 2 statements because they really are the core of your application. The first statement is called Personal, Relevant Background, and Future Goals statement. It has a 3-page limit. And the second is your Graduate Research Plan statement that has a 2-page limit. In addition to these 2 statements, you also need to submit 3 letters of recommendation, and these should really be knock your socks off, outstanding, personal, really speaking to all of your abilities as a scholar, but also as a leader in your field, in your community. So you really want to choose people that know you well enough and can speak to all of your abilities, touch on your personality, how you are as a researcher, and then mentioning some of the things that you care about. So yeah, it's really important that you pick good people to write these letters for you. You can choose up to 5, but then you need to rank them in order of 1 to 5, and they're only going to look at the top 3 for your application. But you could submit more if you're worried that someone's not going to submit it on time, so you can have a backup. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go over what the personal, relevant background, and future goals statement should look like. I really want to stress that this is not going to be a comprehensive review of what to include in this statement because I want to make a separate video on that, on each of the statements actually, because I don't know, there's such a big part of your application and I feel like I just really can't go into depth enough in this video or it's going to be an hour and a half. But I promise that I'll make another video on this topic that you can check out if you need a little bit more help or guidance on this section. So I'll just be giving you some general tips for what this personal statement should look like. Very quickly, this is what a prompt might look like. This is how it's stated in the NSF GRFP application. However, it's like very, very brief, and nowhere in here do they really tell you like how to organize the different parts of your statement. So I'm gonna try to give you an idea of how you might want to like structure these 3 pages. So first, I think that your personal statement should begin with like a little bit of a background or an opening paragraph that is maybe about a page. And in here, you're really gonna want to introduce yourself and paint an image of yourself that really captures the reviewer's attention. You want them to like really remember you, so use this as your hook. Tell them a little bit about where you come from, who you are, how where you come from like shapes maybe some of your interest, intellectual interest, or broader impacts interest. You can give specifics about your personal background, like are you the first to attend college? Do you come from an underrepresented group? Are there like certain hardships, maybe even COVID or other things that you've had to overcome? All of these important things that helped shape who you are as a person, as a researcher, really need to be mentioned and introduced here. You're kind of putting the rest of your personal statement and future goals into context here. And I think if there's like a common theme throughout like your research that you've done in undergrad or some of your interest, you should really like introduce it here. So for example, in mine, I think I mentioned that I cared a lot about like protecting animals and just conservation issues, and also increasing diversity in STEM. So that was like the common theme in my statement. So if you think you have a common theme, I think it's really good to integrate, and you may want to introduce it in this first half a page. Next, you're going to be getting into your relevant background, and I would really break this up into 2 separate sections: intellectual merit for your relevant background and broader impacts relevant background. And both sections should be about 3/4 of a page each. So in the intellectual merit portion, you're kind of describing like your scholarly development. So where did you go to undergrad? What kind of research experiences did you have? You also are going to be like providing evidence of your academic achievements as well as your scholarships. So if there's any awards like publications or presentations, you really want to have this in that section. So I think here you not only want to be listing the experiences and academic achievements that you've had, but you also want to tie it to like the skills that you've learned and the things that you've learned from it that you can apply to grad school, or how it's helped prepare you for success in grad school, right? Because you want to make it very clear why what you did in the past is relevant and matters and helped prepare you for grad school. So next is the broader impacts background section. And here I would think about like, aside from being a student, what other things do you care about? What other things are you involved in? Because most times there's like something else. School isn't your whole entire life. There's other organizations, maybe clubs that you care about. Any like extracurricular service-based stuff, science and outreach and education can go in this section. And I think it's really important that you're focusing on certain pillars such as initiative, leadership, and impact. So it's not enough to just like laundry list the activities that you've done, like the beach cleanups, park cleanups, homeless shelter things. You really want to like look beyond the activities that you did and kind of focus on where you took initiative. So where you saw a problem and thought, I like have a solution. This is something I want to work towards. So where did you take initiative? Where did you serve as a leader? Like where, and this doesn't have to be like president of whatever. Like how did you contribute a significant amount or take a leadership role? And last is how did you have a lasting impact? So how did you contribute and how did your contributions improve the organization long after you left? So maybe you created like teaching materials, developed a workshop or developed a course, things like that. you want to focus on initiative, leadership, and lasting impact. So yeah, I thought this was like one of the most difficult sections for me because I did a lot of activities, but I needed to really work through and like focus in on what are the things that I had the greatest contribution to, that I care the most about, and really like helped change or had an impact in an area. You can also start writing about like why you're doing this. Why is this something you care about? So dig a little deeper. What motivates you to engage in activities like this? The last section of the personal statement is your future goals and action plan. This section is really important, and I would recommend giving about a page to it because the GRFP is investing in your future. So it's not enough that they knew that you did really great things in the past. They want to make sure that you're still doing and plan on continuing all of these great things in the future. So again, I would separate like this one page of your future goals into intellectual merit. So what sort of things do you want to do in your research in graduate school? And also broader impacts. What broader impacts initiatives do you want to engage in while you're in grad school? And you can go on both levels. So like, what do you want to do in both of these areas in grad school and beyond grad school? So intellectually, this might look like, I want to work on this research, I want to present at these conferences, publish. This will help towards my long-term goal of being a professor or working at a government agency. And I found the most important thing here is to like really be specific about the things that you want to do. So if you want to be a professor, that's great, but like, where do you want to be a professor? What kind of professor would you be? How would you serve as a mentor? What kind of like lab culture do you want to help create? And for broader impacts, you can tie this into like broader impacts of your research. And maybe you want to get involved with things at your university, whether it's like an identity-based club or a mentorship program where you can mentor undergrads, teaching workshops, all of these things that you want to get involved in. You should be listing that here. Yeah, so at the closing of this personal statement, you want to give a very clear vision of what you want to look like in the future, weaving in both plans for intellectual merit and broader impacts. So just create like a really strong and memorable closing. Okay, I'm really throwing like a ton of information at you guys, but I want you guys to be well prepared. So we'll get into the graduate research plan statement. And again, I can't go into like too much detail, so I'll just go quickly over what the prompt can look like and how you might want to organize it. So this is an example of the statement prompt. Again, very brief. And the graduate research plan is only 2 pages. And as a second-year grad student, I found it very challenging to wrap up everything that I knew about my project into only 2 pages. Yeah, it seemed impossible to me, but maybe if you're an undergrad applying who doesn't know that much about what type of research they might be doing, 2 pages might be a little bit harder. Anyway, you have 2 pages, and an example of how you might want to like structure this can look like 1, having a research title that is clear, informative, memorable, and doesn't have too much jargon. Then you want to start out with the background or problem statement that can be about 1/4 to 1/2 of a page. And here you want to introduce what is the big picture problem that you're trying to solve or question that needs to be addressed. And why should anyone outside of the field care about it? So once you have your big picture problem, you want to start honing in on your specific research question. So what is the knowledge gap or area where more research needs to be done? And how do you hope to address this gap? What is your research question? How is it creative, original, novel, or like potentially transformative? Then you're going to get into the details of your research plan. So I think this should be about page to a page and a quarter. And again, you should start with a very clear research question. So what is your research question? How does it move the field forward? Second, you want to introduce your study system or study study organism. For me, this looked like introducing the site that I was working at and some of the organisms that I was working with. Here, I also reiterated the qualifications of my research advisor, lab, and university so that they know that I am well qualified and my team is well qualified to do this type of research. I think it's really important that you reiterate that. Then you can come up with either 1 or 2 research aims. So what is the aim of your research? And there can be multiple that tie to answering this larger research question. But you want to organize it like research question, aims. Below your aims, you want clear, testable hypotheses. It's very important that these hypotheses can be tested. And then get into the method section. So how will you be testing these hypotheses? What is like a brief description of the methods? And then you can go a little bit more into detail about things that might be important for them to know, again, without using like too much jargon. I know you need some, but keep in mind that anyone should be able to read and understand why you're using the things that you're using. And I like to break this down into a 3-year research plan because this is a 3-year fellowship. So you can build off, like in year 1, I'm going to do this. In year 2, I'll be adding it by this. And in year 3, I'll be doing this next section. So I think if you organize it very clearly into how you'll be planning out this larger research project to fit into 3 years, it could be really beneficial. I also wanted to note that you can insert a few figures or diagrams if you feel like you really need to, or if it's necessary to understand some of the ideas that you're presenting. But keep in mind that space is limited, and I found that there was just like no way I was going to be able to fit a figure and all of my other text. Then you want to go over into specifically how you're going to analyze your data, how your results are going to tie back to your hypothesis and inform you about whether this is supported or does not support the hypothesis, and maybe something else is happening. But just being very clear about what your results mean in relation to the hypotheses. Then you're going to have a section that is about 1/4 of a page about the intellectual merit of this project, and then another section on the broader impacts of this project. Again, the intellectual merit and broader impacts portion of this statement should be about 1/4 of a page each. And in intellectual merit, you want to really highlight why this project is creative, novel, original, impactful, how it's going to help push the knowledge, push or build upon the knowledge in that field. If you're using like new or interesting methods, make sure that you're stating that here. And also include how you want to publish or present your work. And for broader impacts, this can look like 2 things. 1, what is the big picture importance of your research? For mine, it was deep sea mining focused, so it had a really big like conservation focus, so I mentioned that. And then secondly, how are you as an individual going to be using what you learned from this research and sharing it with the wider audience? So whether it's your community or just non-scientists, how are you going to be getting your work out there? This could be social media, blogs, podcasts, YouTube, really so many things. What is that going to look like? How are you going to share your research outside of the academic community? If you guys are getting any value from this video, please give it a big like. It really helps me. It really helps our channel. And subscribe for more videos like this if you're interested in what grad student life is like or need help on your grad school journey. Maybe you just like science and seeing what life as a scientist is like. We'd really appreciate it if you guys can subscribe and so you don't miss any of our other videos like this. Now I have a few tips for you guys for writing these 2 very important statements. I think it's really important that you begin with your CV, right? Because you're not submitting your CV, but your CV kind of shows the things that you've been involved in over the past few years. And by looking at your CV, you can kind of get an idea of the things that are important to you. And also, once you see all of the things that you did, you can start to like dig a little bit deeper, like why was that something that was interesting to me? And also like how did you become interested in those topics? So yeah, this feels like really like getting to know yourself as a scholar, as a researcher, and as a scientist Also, I got a really helpful tip of creating a gap CV. It's basically like, here's your CV now, and what do you want it to look like when you're already a fellow, or like 1 to 2 years later? What are like the specific things that you think you want to do in grad school to get you closer to your ultimate goal in the future? I think being clear on that can really help for the future goals section. Next, I said to read and look over other examples of people that have gotten the NSF GRFP, look at their applications, look at their statements, look at their reviewer feedback. And there's actually a really great resource online that I found. It is called, you could just look it up, www.alexhunterlang.com, and if you just look up Alex Lang NSF GRFP Fellowship, it'll take you to a website where he goes over like some of the tips for applying. And if you go to the very bottom of the website, you can see that he has like a whole Excel like table of all the different people that applied and whether they got the fellowship or if they got an honorable mention, and you can read over their statements. It's also organized by field, so if you want someone that's closer to your field, and you can read their reviewer comments to see like why they did or didn't get it and what sort of things were the reviewers looking for. Really great examples there. I would highly recommend checking that out. Also, yeah, just writing so many versions and drafts, first drafts, second drafts, like billion drafts of these 2 statements. I looked back at my statement, and when I was reading it, I really thought like, wow, it felt like it took me so long to get to that level of writing, and I can't even believe that it sounds as good as it does in just like 5 pages total, right? But I spent so much time like rewriting certain parts of it, making it sound stronger, improving the wording. But yeah, this just took having tons of people read over it and going through like multiple rounds of revisions. You definitely want time to do all of that, so that's why I would recommend like starting early. Now in mid-September isn't too late if you've already gotten into the writing, because to be honest, I was also on a research cruise working a lot. I worked a lot towards the end of the deadline, so it's not too late. You still have plenty of time to keep writing. You just really need to like focus and write. And yeah, I really don't think that this is an application that just anyone can do in a night or like in a week. That being said, I had a friend that did it like a few nights before and he got an honorable mention, but I think that is not the case for most people. Most people have to put in like a lot of work to get this award. Also, look back at the 5 review criteria elements that I've mentioned. Make sure that your 2 statements are covering all of those topics, because that's exactly how the reviewers are going to be evaluating you. So you have the rubric, you might as well use it to your advantage. Focus on like the 4 pillars, so where you took initiative, where you showed leadership, how you created lasting, meaningful impact, and all of your scholarship. Make sure that you're showing all of those pillars in both of your statements. When you're writing them, I would recommend using headers, bold the sentences or words or like skills that you really want to like highlight and stand out to the reviewer. I think by like bolding some of the words in your 2 statements, these should serve as like, okay, I can get the main idea of this person just by looking at the bolded words. I think it's a really easy way to like stand out to the reviewers, or when they're reviewing your application, they can just like look at the bolded words and get a good sense of who you are again. Okay, so just to give you guys an example of what a timeline could look like. And with all of that, you find out the results in late March or April. Around then, they should be announcing who was awarded the fellowship and who was awarded the honorable mention. And if you were given an honorable mention, that is something that you should definitely put in your CV still, because it's still a really huge accomplishment. Like, this is a very prestigious award. It looks great that you applied to it and got the honorable mention. If you're an undergrad, you can even apply again. But yeah, that is the NSF GRFP. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me this long. I really hope that this video helped you guys get a better understanding of how you should be writing your statements, or what the reviewers are like actually looking for. Comment below if you guys have any other questions about any part of the application section. I'll read and respond to all of those as quickly as I can because I know this is like a really important thing. Also, check out my other videos on the personal statement and the research plan, where I can give you guys a little bit more guidance on those two statements.